Alright. It's been 112 days of hiatus. But we are here. It is July 11th, 7-11, and the Owl House is back. I even have my mango Slurpee that I made. So, you know, we are set. We are ready. Oh man, based on that promo, we are in for a lot. So, Sense and Insensitivity. Let's go.
Hello.
Oh god.
There was rides when this.
Who are you? Jesus.
Annual.
Oh, you don't have many friends, do you? Oh, you have that friend now, though. This image, for 24 hours, this was the only thing on my timeline. And then the promo dropped. And then everyone changed it. Oh, man. I missed this intro. I missed hearing this. I missed this. Oh, this is great.
Boring.
Oh, God. Eda. Oh, no.
Boring.
This is just hurting children.
The curse
oh,
is
no.
quickening.
Eda. You might just be getting older.
Do you have the
Look
item we
who
discussed?
it is.
Oh, yes. Right here.
Is this episode? Oh. 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 Oh, man. It's this episode where they team up.
So Lilith wants to nab this power for the Emperor, huh?
Why does the Emperor want it? Emperor's aging quickly? Gonna die soon?
Go without
Oh,
the
yeah.
map, of
Uh-huh.
course.
This is like Adagast. This is a trick. 100% gonna be a trick, and they're gonna have to like track him down, and he's gonna go all crazy demon.
Hey, there's more to life than shipping.
Don't you dare insult shipping in my presence.
Apprentice?
Oh my god. Are they calling out the fandom? I mean, Disney, you sent out the promo. You had that edited. You knew what you were doing. Oh, King. Oh no. This is gonna go bad. Ooh. Whoa. Oh man. I wish I could be a speed reader like that. That'd be great. You gonna read it? Nope, of course not. No one ever reads it. Yeah.
You're ominous, and I like it.
Yep. At least he acknowledged it, but of course it's King. So of course he likes it. What is this? We got some like blacksmithing and forgery? Oh, that's how they make books? Oh, that's cool. Oh, hey Mytholomew, what's up, man? Here we go. This is what I'm curious about. Also, what's Luce doing during all this? Why covered in leaves? Lilith's probably not much of an outdoors person.
Wouldn't want you
What
breaking a
happened to
hip.
you? Ooh.
Alright, fine.
Yeah.
Be that.
Treat your friends better, King.
But I don't want to be mad at him either.
Oh, this is just such a good person. Aw, Luce.
Great to hear, because I really need your help with my next book.
Gang.
Here's a pen. Right,
King.
ready, clock's a ticking.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yep.
writing for
Lilith's definitely not an outdoors person. And she did use the fireball to get the crap. Wow. Eda, you are strong. Jeez Louise.
I wasn't certain that you'd save me.
Stow it.
Aw.
We might fight, but you're still my sister. Besides,
Aw.
if anyone's put...
Oh, see, it's so nice to see them getting along. Yep. Man, you got tricked by the same thing Luce did.
If it's disappointing in any way, I will spend every day of my life trashing it.
Man, Owl House just calling fandoms out.
That's a toxic mentality that contributes to burnout and unrealistic expectations.
Life as an artist or any creative field, jeez.
That outfit. Ah,
Oh man,
little shoes.
I love seeing them together. You're messing with Eda and the head of the
Sure.
Emperor's Coven. You're gonna get...
Spare us.
Woe to us.
Destroyed,
whose
man.
Fates are
Oh, man.
sealed.
Oh man. Lycliffe?
What is this all about?
Light spell!
Yes, good job. Good job, Luce. Burn it. Burn, okay, or eat it. That works too. Oh. Oh! Yeah, of course. Uh-huh.
Wait a minute. What about King?
King, this isn't about you anymore.
Really? If you were, you'd be much easier to catch. Not now. Because I want to give you a chance to join on your own.
Aw.
Join
cares
in the
about her.
Emperor's Coven.
Aw. They still care about each other so much.
I'll see you around.
Aw. Oh, it's so upsetting that things are probably gonna go terribly. Their relationship is probably not gonna go over well. Because something bad's gonna happen to Eda at the end. At long last, we have reached the end of our hiatus, and to kick things off, we have the episode Sense and Insensitivity. But before I get into the episode, I wanted to first go over the codes. For our episode title, we have a witch loses a true, and yes, I know that other episode titles have been released, although they are not official, so I won't talk about them until Disney TV Animation posts something. For our code symbol, we can see it is right here towards the beginning of the episode as Eda is walking through the book fair. The symbol's translating to and I, which together make A. So our code for the symbols is now 2 witches torn apart, now alone, 2 hearts of stone, A. And I know that Adventures in the Elements has been out, so I know the following word already, but we will cover that next week. But let's get into the episode. And Sense and Insensitivity was one of the rare cases where I found the B plot, in this case Eda and Lilith, to be more interesting than the A plot, which was centered around Luce and King. There really wasn't that much related to the overall plot or lore in this particular episode. The things that I picked up on were in the beginning of the episode when Lilith is talking about retrieving the bloom of eternal youth for the Emperor. While it definitely sounds like it's powerful in its own right and perhaps the Emperor just wants powerful magical artifacts, could it be that he wanted it because he is aging or expected to die soon? We got our very first glimpse of Belos in the promo, and he is masked and also covered head to toe in robes, so it's difficult to ascertain his age. We also don't know the life expectancy of witches, which is what I am assuming for the moment Emperor Belos is. He could be hundreds or even thousands of years old for all we know, but still may be nearing the end of his life, which is why Lilith was so interested in getting the bloom of eternal youth for him. Another interesting plot point that I noticed is that the plan for Eda is no longer for her to be sent to the conformatorium, as we saw in Once Upon a Swap. Lilith stepped in and tried to convince Eda, who was really Luce, to join, and that still seems to be the plan now, as one of the other Emperor's Coven members made note that they should probably focus on capturing the Owl Lady to join the Emperor's Coven. And as we previously saw in Once Upon a Swap, there is a branding glove that would seemingly force someone to join the Emperor's Coven. Lastly, when Lilith offers Eda the chance to make the decision on her own to join, Lilith mentions that the Emperor would be able to heal her curse. Now this is interesting because back in Convention, Kikimora, who's associated with the Emperor's Coven in some way, said that Emperor Belos promised something to Lilith in return for retrieving Eda. But based on how Lilith phrased it in Sense and Insensitivity though, it doesn't seem like healing Eda's curse was the thing that she was promised. Because if it was, I feel Lilith would have just told Eda about her deal. So that leaves the question of what is the thing that Emperor Belos promised Lilith. But that's probably another video entirely. The last thing that I want to mention is that since Lilith mentioned that Belos could heal Eda's curse, he is probably far more powerful than any other witch on the Boiling Isles. I mean, we saw in this episode how Eda team-rocketed a crab monster, and even between the two of them, and likely all the resources that Lilith has at her disposal by being in the Emperor's Coven, they haven't found a cure. So Belos is likely incredibly powerful. Additionally, it doesn't seem like he does anything without getting something in return. When Eda turns down Lilith's offer, she makes note of how she doesn't want to owe him anything. Whether it's because Eda knows from personal experience or she's just making an assumption, she doesn't want to be indebted to him in any way. And based on his design and how he looks, yeah, I'd say it's probably a good idea not to strike any deals with this guy. But moving on from plot and lore related topics, let's move on to character development. We'll start with King and Luce because like I said before, I found Eda and Lilith's plotline for this episode to be more interesting. Now I do like that this was a Luce and King episode because the last time we really got an episode focusing on these two was The Intruder, so it's been a while. Now in The Intruder, Luce was the one who's being a bad friend to King, though it was unintentional. Here in Sense and Insensitivity, King is pretty much being a jerk the whole time, only wanting to write a book to become famous for himself. And we know that King is a very self-centered character, but out of all the episodes so far, I feel like Sense and Insensitivity really highlighted it. From the beginning, we see how King only wants to be popular. When we get to the brainstorming section of the episode, we see that King and Luce are actually having a great time working on this book together. But the second Luce leaves the room, King's self-centered nature gets the best of him and ends up scrapping all of his and Luce's work just to make a story of his own. And especially considering all the time and effort that Luce put into helping King in the first place, yeah, I really don't blame her when she says King should just continue making the story himself if he's just gonna disregard everything that Luce says. And honestly, I like seeing this from Luce. I know Luce is someone who is usually very cheerful and always sees the good in others, but it's nice to have that balance where we see moments where she is upset or angry at others' actions. Now, once King meets Pignette, we again see how self-centered King is being and just wants people to see him as a celebrity. Not even reading the contract and then even noting how ominous Pignette is, though pretty much disregards all of that just for fame and fortune. And a quick side note, I like seeing how books are forged on the Boiling Isles. I just thought it was a really interesting and unique process. We then see how King proceeds to gloat in front of Luce, who is busy working on her own story, and yeah, it's pretty hard to like King in this episode in general, but here especially. Now, to King's credit, he does try and invite Luce to the party for his book, but at this point the damage has already been done, so again, I can't really blame Luce for initially turning down the offer. But of course, Luce being Luce, she's a good friend and wants to be happy for and support King, and eventually does end up going to the party. I just love Luce so much and the amount of compassion that she has for others. But this is immediately ruined by King, who just wants to use Luce as a co-writer so he can remain a celebrity. And yeah, this was a pretty rough episode for King, and not that this isn't true to his character, but like I said before, I think this is easily the most self-centered we have seen King in the show thus far. And then when Luce stands up to King and refuses to write for him, this is again a side of Luce that I like to see outside of her usual cheerful and optimistic attitude. Once Luce is captured, we do see the protective side of King that we have seen before throughout the show come through, with him demanding that Pignette releases Luce. And for as often as King is self-centered, this moment here does reaffirm that King does truly care about Luce. And to King's credit, he does eventually apologize to Luce for hurting her, and Luce reassures King by noting how spending time with him is one of the best parts about being on the Boiling Isles. So it's a nice moment between the two that ultimately leads to them making a plan together, King even letting Luce take the lead. I love how creative Luce has been getting with her glyphs, and thank God Pignette left the top of that magic box open so she could reach her hand through to touch the paper, right? And we actually see that the light spell causes the page to catch fire, so this could also indicate that Luce is getting more powerful with her light spell, since we haven't seen it cause paper to burn up before. Now ultimately, the resolution to Luce and King's predicament is more of convenience with the arrival of Tiny Nose. But I am interested to see later in the show if this will be a continuing gag of Tiny Nose being a famous author. Now King, despite everything that just happened, still has the audacity to still think about himself in this moment when Tiny Nose is offered the opportunity of being an author. Like, seriously, King, did the past few minutes teach you nothing? But overall, I found King and Luce's plotline entertaining. I do like episodes that focus on these two, but I felt King in particular was just incredibly self-centered this episode, even more than he usually is. With Luce, I like that we saw her highs and lows in this episode. We see the cheerful Luce that we all know and love when she begins brainstorming the book with King, but we also see her more serious moments of standing up for herself and not being a pushover to King. Now on to Lilith and Eda. The first thing that I want to point out is that Eda's aging is a topic brought up several times in this episode, and I have already talked about how Eda's curse has altered her appearance to make her look older than she actually is. But considering that Lilith pokes fun at her several times for her age, I'm thinking this hints that Eda is the older of the two. I thought that ever since we saw the incident reports from Something Ventured, Someone Framed, that Eda was older when it was mentioned that she raised an army of abominations when Lilith's lunch money was stolen. That seems like an older sibling move to me, but now with Lilith poking fun at Eda's age, I feel like it adds to that theory. Now, in the beginning of this episode, we see Lilith is trying to obtain the Bloom of Eternal Youth for the Emperor, which Eda overhears and wants to 1. Take the bloom for herself, and 2. Also make sure that the Emperor's Coven doesn't get it, and leave it to Eda to want to take something just out of spite. And this is a really small thing in this episode, but I like how Eda refers to Luce as apprentice when she calls her down. Just a nice little indicator that Eda is truly beginning to see Luce as her student. Once we actually follow Eda on her journey, we see her and Lilith's paths cross. And was it just me, or did it seem like Lilith had a run-in with some sort of trouble? I mean, Lilith doesn't exactly strike me as the most outdoorsy individual, but she's usually pretty good at keeping up her appearance. Why is she covered in leaves and dirt? It's never mentioned in the episode, but I just find it so odd that we see Lilith wandering around with a more disheveled appearance. and when Eda comes out to attack, she doesn't take a defensive stance, she just screams. Like, this is Lilith, the head of the Emperor's Coven. It just seems odd to me that she would have this reaction. But maybe I'm looking too much into it, but there's something about this moment that just feels off to me. And perhaps there will be an episode later in the season where we see if anything happened to Lilith prior to Eda finding her. Also, I just love this moment right here.
And I'm gonna get there before you. Ah! No, you won't!
When we see Eda and Lilith running through the forest, we also get a tiny bit of information about their childhood, with Eda noting how it reminds her of when they would race to the kitchen. It's small, but it's also a nice little touch of backstory for the two. Eda manages to save Lilith by blasting a fireball at this crab creature, and this scene is heartwarming and also heartbreaking. Lilith thanks Eda for saving her, but admits that she wasn't certain that Eda would. And just look at Lilith's face here. You can tell that she feels some guilt in this moment for everything she has done in trying to get Eda to join the Emperor's Coven. She's been very upfront with her intentions, and Eda knows that being around Lilith could just cause more problems for herself when it comes to the Emperor's Coven. Understandably, these thoughts are all going through Lilith's head and gives her the assumption that Eda would care more about herself than saving her. But at the end of the day, they are still sisters, and Eda would never let anything bad happen to Lilith. And just look at these two, it warms my heart. I love seeing both of them on friendlier terms and actually smiling and enjoying each other's company for once. Also, I love this screenshot. Now, while Eda may have just saved Lilith and the two shared a heartwarming moment, she's still Eda at the end of the day and goes to claim the bloom of eternal youth for herself. Where, surprise, surprise, it's a trap, and seriously, this is like Adagast all over again, though to Eda's credit, she did acknowledge that there was probably a 50-50 chance that it was a trap, and she just went through with it anyway, which is probably one of the most Eda things that Eda can do. But I love their banter. Like, this is what I have been wanting for a while, to see these two on friendlier terms and actually getting along. And we finally get it in this episode. I love them both so much, and I'm just so worried for what's going to happen later in the season because I don't see things continuing to go this well moving forward. Now, I don't know what this guy was thinking in luring both the head of the Emperor's Coven and Eda the Owl Lady to him, because they are like two of the most powerful witches on the Boiling Isles, but you know, whatever, his funeral. Unfortunately, we don't actually get to see these two fight this guy, but I mean, this screenshot alone was enough for me, and honestly, it probably wasn't much of a fight anyway. We see again a nice touching scene between the two, with Lilith again poking fun at Eda's age, though in a less cynical manner than before, noting that she would be much easier to catch if she truly was aging rapidly. Eda is understandably concerned at the mention of being captured, but surprisingly, Lilith doesn't want to force Eda into joining, rather give her the choice to join on her own. And just based on Eda's expression here, even she is shocked by this response, and it definitely shows that Lilith isn't as cold-hearted as she appears and genuinely cares about her sister. Eda declines, and Lilith is understanding of Eda's decision and doesn't protest, though she does make a slightly cryptic yet lighthearted comment.
Catch you later, sis.
Not if I catch you first.
Just the smiles on their faces shows how much they care for one another, and it's so heartwarming but also heartbreaking because there's that voice in the back of my head telling me something's gonna happen later this season that's gonna likely put these two on opposing sides. After Eda leaves, you can see that Lilith is conflicted with her situation and needing to carry out her role of being the head of the Emperor's Coven, but also trying to be there for her sister. Based on the promo that we saw with Lilith and Belos, I'm guessing that Lilith capturing Eda is going to be something that Belos will want Lilith to accomplish sooner rather than later. So these moments of Lilith letting Eda get away probably aren't going to be happening for much longer. And in this moment, Lilith probably knows this. But you know, we can't end on a dramatic note, we gotta have Lilith blasting this guy with a fire spell to at least get some levity. Now we know the two sisters will be playing Grudgeby against each other at some point this season, so at the very least there should be a seemingly fun episode before things get serious. But Eda and Lilith's interactions were really the highlight of this episode for me, and I really hope we at least get one more episode with them being on friendlier terms, hopefully the Grudgeby episode, because it's so refreshing to see these two actually getting along. Overall, I enjoyed Sense and Insensitivity. It definitely wasn't a plot or lore-filled episode, but there were things sprinkled throughout that piqued my interest. We definitely focused a lot more on the characters, and honestly, I love seeing character development, so I am not complaining. But next week we have Adventures in the Elements, so I can finally talk about that episode because there is so much to go over. Thank you so much for watching, I hope you have a fantastic day, and until next time guys, take care.